It's Thursday, February 9th, 2023. Um, I'm watching the ABC Channel 7 News from yesterday. Um, they have on this piece about tracking your health, which is what I've been doing with the Fitbit since December with sleep and so on and so forth. It mentions in there the pertinence of it is um, it mentions the specifically they're talking about Apple, which I don't have an Apple. I have Fitbit. It's all they could afford. Um, and so it states in there that there's, I don't know if you call it an algorithm or a pattern or whatever the word combination is that's acceptable, but it handles the gyroscopy around the human. So I'm, of course, thinking like in a sector vector way of splicing um, science in a way to speak on it in very low vocabulary access based on what I've been able to just find. Um, and with dark matter, like the dark matter space that they say hasn't been discovered, and then that they're funding projects somewhere in the world, um, that dark matter space in the invisible is monitored by these tracking your health pieces. It's talking about like a geospatial, like the gyroscopy. It picks up on the phone, it says, or the watch picks up on if you're traveling and your gait is off. So traveling by foot, um, and your gait is off, it can tell if you're limping. It can tell if you're running or whatever. Um, which again, then I sit in my quiet and I think of like, where is this really relevant? And where it's really relevant is personalized vortex or personalized vortex or personalized health matrices is so important because, like, for myself, my balance is off. My mental fortitude is not as strong as it was. I'm trying to get this health shift back by running and building the muscles back up. But but in the field, there's these micro doses. And again, I don't know if they come way of a sweetener word of artificial sweeteners, artificial preservatives, but it's like these micro doses of these chemical compounds that I don't have the mental fortitude or access to. I wouldn't even know where to begin. I noticed today Quaker Oats um, took the raisins out of the oatmeal, which to me would seem like a big signal of something incredibly important. And I'm not sure if it's the dehydration factor and the chemical process that dehydrates the grapes and preserves it that might be detrimental to the health. Um, my grandmother came from a very healthy line of people, but her mom started taking Western medicine after she moved from Ireland here. And then my grandmother wound up getting hit with MS, like ALS, um, and deteriorating in health very quickly. And I'm looking at the health paradigm shift of her, and she was in like a welfare class of people. Um, and I'm thinking of the tea that she would drink and some of the other things and some of the ingestibles in microdoses of poisons that have devastating effects if they go untreated. And then these combinations between health and nutrition and so on and so forth. So I'm watching my own, but then I'm also looking at what has become available since her um, season, um, and into my own. And now they have this health tracking. So again, when the humans say things like they haven't discovered dark matter, I'm like, I'm a little confused by that, because dark matter is the realm of the invisible. But if you have something like an infrared or some kind of electronic utility, there it is measurable space. Like if we just create a vacuum for this conversation with nothing else being relevant that maybe somebody else has discovered or whatever, and not to get conflicting theoreticals of people who already had a hand up and a ladder given to them to get them into a better spot than where I am. I'm in a field where I feel like I've just been run off the road into a ditch, and now I don't know how to provide for myself. And um, it almost feels like black magic in a way that's somehow gone into effect. I don't know who would have wanted to hex me. I don't know who has this capabilities and the responsibility of making sure the star children are cared for and not harmed in any way. I don't know who is there to help us and who wants to harm us. I don't. I mean, and again, I have that arc angelic piece of a duplicating star in a symmetrical way. Um, I know people know about it. I just, again, so I'm watching this and it says that they haven't discovered, this piece doesn't say they haven't discovered black matter, but I've heard that reiterated on other shows to the public, that says that it has not been, um, like it's being studied or they're trying to discover it. It hasn't been discovered yet. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. And then I was watching, um, and I'm in North America. So, and then I'm watching the My Three Sons, and the father there, has a draft table, which my grandfather had a draft table in the room, um, and I used to call it his artistic table. It's where he would sketch and things. Um, Chuck Harrington, who was a neighbor across the street, he had one. He worked for Disney. Um, and then there's something on the wall that this man had, that My Three Sons has. Um, I don't even know the name of the utility any longer. I haven't seen it in years. They used to be. I think maybe it's a barometer. Um, I used to see them more as a kid, going to other people's homes, or on TV. I really don't see them out in the field ever. I've been a real estate agent, or I was a real estate agent for many years, going into all sorts of homes. And it's almost like that important piece of equipment no longer exists in the field. It's disturbing, honestly.
All right, we're going to move on to other news right now, and they are incredibly powerful technologies and smartphones that track your health and your wellness, some of which you probably don't even know about. ABC's Becky Worley has the details on all of the helpful information that's inside your device.
You know that your phone tracks how many steps you take walking each day. But did you know it's also analyzing the way you're walking? Using a sensor called an accelerometer that measures, you guessed it, acceleration, and the gyroscope that measures rotation, your phone creates a profile of your walk. Basically, if you're limping or shuffling, it'll send you an alert.
And so, using that information, your iPhone can tell you whether or not you're at risk of taking a hard fall.
If you have an app,
It also is a really in dark matter world of like pascals and like atmospheric. If the poles are off, and are the humans actually suffering by health, either individually or by, I mean, for more grandiose studies, or is it an individualized problem, or is it a population demographic problem? I mean, like, are they being targeted, or is it something from, say, satellite in between? I mean, is that what? Because, I mean, just outside of our visible in deep space, there's things they refer to as satellite equipment, which we can't see where they're positioned and if there's signals being sent overhead harming the field. But now with these tracking devices, if the gyroscope is off or the gate is off, or it messes with almost like a bird with its magnetic positioning that all of a sudden flies into a window, and like breaks its neck. I mean, it's the same thing if something hits us from the invisible spectrum of dark matter and dark deep space and harms our ability to function in a normal, healthy manner. It would change our personal vortex or our personal vector and gate.
Apple Watch, the data you can access goes way, way up. Heart rate, blood oxygen level, and respiratory rate are logged. While these aren't medical devices to be used if you're sick, they can help you see trends, especially for tracking your fitness. It can monitor your sleep, telling you about your REM, core, and light sleep cycles. All this data is great, but what about privacy? Let's talk privacy.
Apple cannot read or access that data. It is in your control. It's something we obviously take very seriously.
Wearables from other companies offer similar, but not exactly the same metrics. For example, in the Samsung Watch, there's no walking stability metric, but it does estimate your body fat percentage. And on the privacy front,
the health data for Samsung devices and for Google devices are actually encrypted, and so it's not possible to actually get access to this information unless you actually are the user yourself.
Becky Worley for Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
All right, we want to get right to saying it is a
Like, that's the level that they want the public to have, like, confidence, I suppose, and faith in their whatever. Again, do I believe it? No. I mean, if you have like $1 billion CEO bucks, I mean, buying a bucket of data from, I don't know who holds the data, licensing or capability or protection. I mean, it is like frightening how if somebody just doesn't like something that you do, has the potential to life hack and then cause absolute misery. Which again is where morals and ethics come in. But again, I have no idea who's handling any of these things, especially by looking at the television and the junk conversations that go on. Now, this morning they talked about the food. They talk specifically about mercury inside of tuna. And so I'm listening to the mercury inside the tuna conversation. And I've heard it before. But today they actually go a little bit more in depth, asking like, how do you rid the body of it? Is there a remedy to it if you accidentally ingest too much? that sort of thing. So they actually touched on that, which I thought was a really nice elaboration, which they don't normally do. So I was grateful for that. And then that goes back to like the actual in the house, in the residence. I noticed the Quaker oatmeal removed the raisins. So
A new Consumer Reports investigation out just this morning finds that there may be more mercury in canned tuna than you realize. Consumer Reports found what they called unpredictable spikes of mercury levels in 5 popular canned tuna brands. You see them on your screen. And they say that pregnant people may be best off avoiding tuna altogether. Now, we should mention that these mercury levels are within FDA standards, which currently say that pregnant people can eat canned tuna in small quantities. We reached out to all 5 companies in the report: Chicken of the Sea, Safe Catch, Star-Kissed, and Wild Planet. They say their products are safe and within FDA standards. Bumblebee did not get back to us in time for you for this report. For more on all of it, let's bring in CBS News medical contributor Dr. David Agus. Dr. Agus, good morning to you. Before we get into some of these recommendations, what are the risks of eating canned tuna?
Well, mercury is a compound that affects neurodevelopment, and so it's a neurotoxin. So if you have a high mercury level while the brain is developing in a fetus, there can be cognitive issues later in life. So we're very cautious in a developing brain. So that is, young children and pregnant women especially need to keep mercury away from those neurons that are developing.
And I guess I should clarify, it's not necessarily canned tuna that is the issue. This can be in any kind of tuna, and not only tuna, right? Other fish as well?
Yeah, so mercury is an impurity in coal. And when you burn coal, elemental mercury goes to the clouds, and then it rains. And then when it comes down into the ocean, bacteria convert it to methylmercury. These bacteria are deep. Fish eat it, and then large fish eat the smaller fish, and that's how they accumulate mercury. And so it's the larger fish and the deeper fish where you get the mercury. Swordfish, tuna, and other big, deep fish have higher levels of mercury. Very little mercury, for example, in salmon and trout and other smaller fish that are at the surface.
Dr. Agus, it's David. Forgive my ignorance, but can you cook it out, so to speak? Like, I love a tuna steak, right? So is that in some ways safer than, let's say, canned tuna off the shelf?
Sounds almost like a song. Can you cook it out? Unfortunately, no. Is that the elements in that food stay there, and they're very stable to heat. So we can't remove it. And what this report showed is that while light tuna has much less mercury than other tuna.
Speaking of a song, on this morning, it dawned on me, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, with the topology of the symmetry in one of the children that I had. And then they showed a picture of Mozart, where the eyes are the key piece and the key feature, along with the nose, in portrait, that it had a 1780, so it had a 78 in there, which of course in numerology was important. And it went along with Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, in like a mon petit ami.
It's variable, and you're going to get a batch here and there with a higher level. And so while the FDA is correct that we don't really know the level that can cause neurodevelopment issues, and these are probably safe, why take that risk? A developing baby, you want to give them a chance so they can actually develop normally. 8% of pregnant women in the United States have a mercury level that may affect the brain development of the child. And they're predominantly wealthy women who can afford and buy fish all the time. So we have to be aware of it.
So, Dr. Agus, if I was your patient, and I am, what would you tell me? How much tuna can I eat? Should I eat?
Because he's
You're not
not
supposed to
pregnant.
say that on air, David.
I know. There you go.
So you can have 1 to 3 servings a week of tuna, and as an adult, it would be very safe. Try to stick to the light tuna if you can. But the key is, it's moderation. Don't have it every day, which some people do, but you really need to have moderation. 1 to 3 a week, I'm sorry.
Real quickly, Dr. Agus, is there any treatment if you do get a higher exposure level?
Dana, it's a great question. Is that it's just, you abstain from it. And if you abstain from fish with mercury, it will go away over several weeks. So there are no pills, there's no chelation. It goes away naturally and is clear from the body.
Well, I will not be abstaining. I like my tuna with pickles,
Here, here.
mayo, olive oil, and lemon. All of it in there. A little dill, salt, and pepper. It is delicious.
Moderation.
Dr. Agus, moderation, of course. Dr. Agus, thank you very much. Coming up, Google loses 100.
Now, talking about props, where I used to see this a lot as a kid on the wall. Nobody really pointed it out what it was used for. I still don't know what kind of instrumentation it is. In like a wall utility that they used to have up when whatever. And then they have also the draft table. And then he says something about this morning on My Three Sons about a foreign legion. I've never even heard those words used before. This is called My Three Strikers, this particular episode. I'm not really versed on the relevance, but again, that's part of the problem with communications while I'm here, or since I've been here, since I've been born here. This is what he used to have in his study, and he turned something and then it would come up on a tilt so he could do his whatever. My dad put up one of his within our house, one of the most famous paintings of my grandfather. It was almost like, again, like if you think of humans as like signaling, like what are humans, and in a broad spectrum of what is their purpose and why are they here, if you have to give them some kind of origin story. Well, if there's some kind of receiving signal in a larger system, and then there are some that are able to receive, like they used to say gift or whatever. I don't know if you consider it paranormal, but if they're able to see vision and they have hand-eye coordination and they're able to sketch, some call themselves architects, some call themselves artists. Again, it's a really big field with a big umbrella, and not everyone is created in the same whatever. There's like natural talent, and then there's this forced conversation and whatever. So I found out really interesting about what was he experiencing in his life frame, or like what was his creativity level, in what was his contribution, and what did I inherit from him in visions of the now of where he was and where his star led. In almost like a journeyman way. But this particular table, was today to actually see one. I haven't seen one in years. I don't know anybody who drafts like that any longer. Chuck Harrington was the last one I saw. My grandfather was just prior to that. So that was My Three Sons, which was S1E12. My Three Strikers. Bad dreams follow the boys' demand for a raise in their allowance. So that was that episode. So anyhow, So just going back to in like a physiological kind of a way, in whatever day this is, in weather wise or atmosphere or climate change, um, there was this incredible like tiredness. And then I have my right side behind, more in the popliteal area, almost like just this, uh, the movement of the muscles and the tendons. It almost feels like rubber bands, um, moving in this awkward way. So I had to put a brace on my leg today. And again, I'm not sure why. Yesterday, I was able to run. Today, I'm not. And again, there are these possibilities and levels of possibilities of, is it some form of microdose? This morning, my son and I were walking to school, and there was this van that pulled up in front of the house, and this white exhaust was coming out of the tailpipe. Now, exhaust is not always white in its plume, but today it was, and it was very noxious. The two of us, um, it was trying to walk fast away from this exhaust, not knowing where he filled up, if there's any additives in the tank or whatever, and not knowing what the health effects are, in long-term consequences, since there's all of these slight, like between the preservatives and so on and so forth, that, I mean, like the liver only has so much life in it. And again, having so many different, I don't even know, biochemical attacks at the same time on a very like microdosed level, where it's, I don't know. I don't know how it's controlled. I don't know how and who watches over it. Um, but it is concerning. And then they have the added on top of that in the dark matter field, um, and losing the neuromotor balance every now and again, not knowing why. I mean, there's no physiological reason. I keep going to the doctor, they keep testing my blood, they don't come up with any answers, but yet it's happening. So is it like a micro pole or polarity, inside of like a personal vector of New York? I don't know who watches over that from deep space. I don't know who's in charge of any of those, the layers of management. I mean, they have to be incredibly important people. I just, again, I in the level of life that I was delivered to by Stork, I mean, in this reality, I don't really know who or how to signal properly that there's, my grandmother had a problem, and now I'm having a problem, and there's been no way out. I mean, like, I see the women on The View. I mean, this morning they had a whole talk on, um, having your own money and having your financial freedom and stuff. That's wonderful. So where was that option for me throughout my life? Because when I look at the topological and the like ability to participate, there's been more withdrawal of services than there has been handouts. So I could earn or work my way through. Um, it's when I look at it from a broad spectrum, I just see how damaging the last 4 decades have been, while I hear everybody else voicing how it's completely been opposite for them. They've done like the total 180 from how it's been for myself. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza, it's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken. And it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.